Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslock talking about reciprocity.com. The E is spelled with a 3. Is where I believe that all writers should be able to get feedback to make their writing better and for them to become much more prolific. I actually created this particular platform to help out as many people as I possibly can and to especially help out graduate students and people that are doing academic writing as well. So you can check that out. So in this particular video, I really wanted to talk about contamination. So this is my threats of internal validity series where I'm going through and talking about different threats of internal validity that I think are really relevant, particularly to those that are interested in the social sciences, in organizations. It's something, so I'm a professor of innovation and strategy and entrepreneurship, and it's something we have to think about, and it's becoming much more important for us to think about. It's becoming much more of a essential thing that we deal with in our field, and we have to very much consider these different effects of internal validity, making sure, and what do I mean by internal validity? It's making sure that the effect that you observe is actually related to what you're hypothesizing and not due to some sort of spurious cause, right? So it's looking at these, so you see some sort of correlation and then you can suggest that was because of causation, or it's more likely because of causation than something else, right? So A is leading to B. And in this particular video, I really wanted to talk about contamination. And it is one effect that we often forget about, and it's often difficult to control for and to reduce. So what do I mean by contamination? Well, contamination is where the effects that you're observing or that you are experimenting on, that they're being contaminated, they're moving between multiple groups and they're sort of spreading between multiple groups, some sort of diffusion process between the groups. So I wanted to take a step back. So in this particular video, what I'm going to do is get into what do I mean by contamination, and then go into, what are some possible ways to mitigate contamination. So the contamination, you can imagine that you're doing a experiment, right? So that's where I'm going to start with all these videos. Imagine you're doing an experiment. You have a treatment group and a control group. The treatment group gets whatever you're giving them, and the control group doesn't get that. It gets some sort of placebo. Well, you can imagine that in a laboratory, like a chemistry lab, for example, that you actually, so the treatment group is maybe some sort of bacteria, and the control group is a similar kind of bacteria, and you're giving them some sort of antibiotic, for example. And you want to see what happens to that process. But then you go and you put the little bacteria, you put the antibiotic on a little mixing spoon, and then you give it to the treatment group, and then you take that little mixing spoon and then you put it in the control group as well. And what ends up happening is you're kind of contaminating each side with the mixing spoon. So you use the mixing spoon to put stuff into the treatment group, and then you don't necessarily clean it off very well, and then you mix up the control group. What you're getting is some sort of form of contamination between the two groups. I mean, the classic example of this, years and years ago, physicians never washed their hands between, giving live births and stuff like that. So they were actually, doing some sort of surgery. This is the hundreds, like maybe 100, 150 years ago. They would go and do a live birth. They wouldn't wash their hands. Their hands would be all contaminated. And then they do another live birth with somebody else. And lo and behold, they were transferring diseases and sicknesses and stuff like that. And the child mortality rate was really high. We didn't know what was causing that. And it turned out it was just because they're contaminating each other, contaminating the babies, when they were going through the live birth process, right? When going through somebody having a baby. and they're contaminating, spreading this disease. Essentially what contamination is you have some sort of other mechanism, some sort of diffusion mechanism that is spreading the effect between the control group and the treatment group, right? And that is causing you, what it does, it reduces the effect that you're going to observe, the difference in the effect you're going to observe between the treatment group and the control group, in that they're going to kind of start moving towards each other, and you're going to see that the effect is very similar to each other, and you're not going to be able to distinguish the two very well, right? So you're going to assume that they're basically the same thing. The effect is that there's a null effect. So what can you do to control for contamination, reduce contamination? First one is just being really careful that you are cognitively, separating those two groups as much as you possibly can. So if you're doing some sort of survey, for example, and you want to make sure that, so you're sending out a survey to multiple companies, multiple organizations, you want to make sure that maybe you are not contaminating the sample by sending the same survey to the same firm, right? That, or different surveys to the same firm, because then people might talk between getting them, and they might know each other. And then what's going to happen is, because they're talking, that they're going to share answers, and then the effect is going to start going towards each other because they're sharing answers, and they're like, oh, well, the survey was about this, and what do you think about that? And then the effect is going to diminish, right? That you're not going to see nearly as much effect there. So just making sure that there's not possible ways that the site of the survey can be contaminated in any sort of way, that the effect can be transferred between multiple the treatment and control group. The other thing is, once you actually find out, and you want to just be really careful that you're not doing any sort of a thing like that where you can contaminate the two samples. The other thing that you can do is, if you do find out that there was some sort of contamination and it was only on a few groups or a few individuals, well, then maybe you can add a control variable, a dummy variable after the fact, and you can run that in the regression whenever you look at the effects, and you might be able to see the effect of the contamination and might be able to control for that with a dummy variable. But in general, I don't know too many ways that you can actually reduce this, other than just being really careful with not contaminating, and just being, thinking through, how is this sample going to be contaminated in some sort of way that there's going to be some sort of transfer in the effect. Maybe it is, that people are really similar, and that they're going to chat somehow, and you just want to reduce that sort of ability for them to chat and to share answers on whatever survey you're doing or whatever thing that you're doing, right? You just don't want that contamination to occur, so you want to reduce that effect as much as possible. If the sample is really contaminated, you might have to throw it out and start all over again, right? If you find out that there is a problem, you might have to just start all over again. I don't know what the solution is. If there's solutions, make sure you leave some comments down below. That definitely does help. If you like this video, do the old thumbs up, and that's very helpful. And you can watch some older videos and see what else I'm doing. Every Wednesday, I'm putting out this Nerd Out Wednesday stuff, where I talk about different things in science that I find interesting. And right now I'm on a bent on internal validity, and just investigating it myself and making sure that I'm very much aware, and you're just learning along this journey as well. So, and if you like the Reciprocity Project, the E is spelled with a 3, I'm trying to help out graduate students with this, help out research with this, and help out writers, because I really truly believe that people can become much better writers than they can, or that they currently are, with feedback from others. And it's going to help them become much more prolific, and as well as help them write much better along the way. So I created this for my own itch, and I'm just sharing it with the world right now at this moment. So thank you again. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.